So another weekend and more top-ranked prospects flocking to Tuscaloosa for a loaded weekend full of some of college football's top prospects. And today, we need to break it all down. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments. Give me a Y for yes, N for no. Do you believe Alabama will move the needle for some of these top-ranked prospects visiting today and this weekend? Let me know what you're thinking. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it, and if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below. But having said all that, let's jump right into this. And first and foremost, we need to talk about the awesome visitors Alabama is hosting this weekend, but we also need to talk about how there are some commits that will be in attendance, such as an Antonio Coleman and a Luke Metz. And the reason why I wanted to start there is anytime you have these visitor weekends with such heavy hitter names, I love when you can get guys that are already committed in that class to be present. The reason is simple. Because right now, Alabama's coaching staff has done a phenomenal job at cultivating and building positive relationships and doing so really quickly. But if you're able to not only have that, but stack on top wherever your recruits are recruiting for you, that's what you love to see. Time and time again, we've talked about some of the Alabama commits that have been phenomenal recruiters. We're talking about a Jalen Mbakwe for a Ryan Williams. We're talking about Richard Young, who is tweeting at every prospect imaginable whenever he was a prospect. And those are the things that can move needles. Those are the things that can help you win a battle. It might not be the total reason, but it's all about comfortability. And one of the things I talk about all the time is if you look around at the college tutor space, you're not getting tutored by professors. You're getting tutored by your own peers, and the reason is simple, because the information is easier to digest. It's more relatable coming from a peer as opposed to a principal-agent relationship. So for Alabama, you have fantastic recruiters that have been flexing their muscles, really building relationships, and now you have guys coming to this weekend that are already committed that can help get these guys on board. But who exactly are we looking at? Let's start the list with some names that have confirmed they will be here, such as an Andrew Babaloa. We've talked about Andrew Babaloa just a few days ago, how he's the number 29 prospect in the nation, the number 5 offensive tackle, and the number 1 player in the state of Kansas. And this was a talking point I had a few days ago, that I'm really interested to see what work Coach Cap is able to put on the offensive line, because this is a unit that's been in the thorn in the side of Alabama's offense for 3 years in a row. And I'm under the impression that if Alabama even has a middle-of-the-pack offensive line in terms of sacks allowed last season, we might be talking about a very different result. However, that's neither here nor there. All we can do now is look forward, and Coach Cap is bringing an energy that's infectious according to the guys that are there. But hopefully, we start to see that pay dividends on the recruiting trail, and Andrew Babaloa would be a fantastic addition. Speaking of a 5-star that'll be in the trenches, how about Justice Terry, the number 8 player in the nation, the number 2 defensive lineman in the nation, and the number 2 player in the state of Georgia. He is currently committed to USC after he surprised everybody in the college football space, flipping from Georgia to USC. However, it needs to be said, his thought process revolving around Alabama has not changed. Justice Terry was quoted a few months ago saying that Alabama was a place that he could actually see himself at because Alabama's development is second to none. And this is something I'm going to be watching. Freddie Roach being retained by this new coaching staff was always a home run hit, in my opinion. There were other schools coming to try and get Freddie Roach to leave the Crimson Tide and coach defensive line elsewhere. However, getting him to stay means you have continuity with relationships such as a Justice Terry. Now he's coming on a weekend where Antonio Coleman will be here. He gets to refamiliarize himself with the Crimson Tide, familiarize himself with this new coaching staff, get to know someone such as an Antonio Coleman, and further his relationship with Freddie Roach. That has got to be compelling. And that's an area where I think most Alabama fans are going to be watching, is what does Alabama do in the trenches for recruiting? I think all Alabama fans everywhere expect big wins in terms of quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and even tight ends, given this offensive staff. But like I said, retaining Freddie Roach will help you continue those relationships that he's already been working on for quite some time. And if we're talking about recruiting, relationships are king, and that's something that a lot of other schools can flex over Alabama right now, is the continuity of relationships that may span 1 year, 2 years, sometimes even as far back as 3 years. That's why retaining someone such as Roach for Justice Terry is massive. We move forward. Going back to the offensive side of the ball, how about a Marcus Harris? This is someone we've talked about quite frequently. A top 150 player in the nation from modern day. And one thing we've realized is this new staff, they have ties to the West Coast, and they're going to use those ties. Marcus Harris is one of the most gifted wide receivers in the nation. Like I said, top 150 player in the nation. More specifically, if we look at the 24/7 Sports Composite, he comes in as the number 132 player in the nation, the top 20 wide receiver, and a top 15 player in the state of California. And like I said, he plays for modern day. And every time I talk about a prospect from certain schools, such as a Modern Day, a Duncanville, an IMG, you love trying to get those guys because those guys are practicing against players that will be playing college football. They play their league play against players that will be playing college football. And though it's not a given that they will make the transition successfully from high school football to college football, you like their chances because they've been in a competitive environment. This is nothing new to them. Competition is something they have welcomed just by proxy of being where they are. Modern Day is one of those places that has one of the most loaded rosters in all of high school football. On top of that, they play in the Trinity League. And I don't have to tell any of you about how good that Trinity League is. There's a principled argument that it might be the best high school league in America. Now, there are some other ones that would give it a run for its money. Some of the Texas leagues out here, you look at the DC area, some of the leagues they have. But top to bottom, it's tough to argue that that Trinity League out in California isn't the best conference in all of high school football. It is loaded with talent. Getting in a win for Marcus Harris, that would be big. And as I just said, now you have an offensive staff. You have Jamarcus Shepard, who I think is going to prove to be one of the best wide receiver coaches in the nation, not only in terms of development, but certainly in terms of recruiting. Now that he has the Alabama resources, I can't wait to see how this battle ends up. We get to the last name we're going to discuss today, Bo Jackson, a top 100 player in the nation, specifically coming in at number 70 overall, a top 5 running back, specifically coming in at number 4, and a top 5 player in the state of Ohio, specifically once again coming in at number 4. He stands 6 foot, 205 pounds, and when you turn on the film, no shortage of things to love. This is someone who is ready for the college game. They have the physical tools to be able to succeed in a variety of ways at the next level. And this is a conversation that's somewhat analogous to the conversation we just had about Justice Terry. Because you get to retain Gillespie, you can further this relationship. It's not something where you're starting from scratch. You can build upon a relationship that was already existing. And in my opinion, it's always going to be easier to build upon an already steady foundation than trying to create a steady foundation and then build from there. I always liken recruiting to building a house. You have got to build your foundation and go from there. Luckily, with the presence of Freddie Roach, with the presence of Gillespie, those foundations are already set. Now you're just building upon an already solid foundation. Now that doesn't mean it's an automatic win. We know there are heavyweight recruiters out there for a Justice Terry, for a Bo Jackson, but it is something that I find to be a compelling factor, something that I'm going to be watching closely. But y'all already know. I can't wait to hear what all of you think. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking, and let me know, do you think Alabama exits the weekend with a recruiting victory? Can't wait to hear from you. That's it.